From the Star Conspiracy and the content channel, Hey, Brett Starr. I'm Brett Starr. This is Long Strange Trip, episode 10.
Okay. So my name is Nancy Crabb, and I am on the creative team at the Star Conspiracy. I some days lead, some days follow, but technically speaking, I guess I lead the creative team. And my background, I kind of fell into what I do accidentally. This was not at all what I had planned to do for a career. I think I actually wanted to be a photographer for National Geographic for like a whole lot of years as a kid. That was my thing. But I went to school for photojournalism and radio, TV, film. And I had an internship that fell through one summer. And I had an aunt who was working at a small ad agency, and she said, well, we can keep you busy for the summer and you can earn a paycheck and learn something new. And that was right before things were starting to shift into computers. Mm-hmm. So I spent a summer, shooting things on a stat camera and learning how to build out mechanical boards and all kinds of things that are no longer terribly useful. But that was kind of how I wound up doing what I'm doing. And then how I wound up at the Star Conspiracy, I spent about 18 months stalking Steve Smith and at the farmer's market. And I had found you guys online and read your old blog and thought, yeah, I want to work for that company. That's where I want to be. Those guys seem weird. And I like it. And it just took a lot of time hammering away until you had work that needed to be done. So I've been here, I think, almost 11 years now.
At what point did you realize, so you've been with the Star Conspiracy for a long time. You were here before It was the Star Conspiracy. And it's changed a lot. And we're always, very busy and focused on work and, et cetera. But at what point did you realize that the pandemic was going to change everything?
Oh, wow. I think early on, and that was just kind of more of a hunch and the realization that even if it didn't change necessarily everything, it was the first time in my lifetime I had experienced anything like that. And I knew that it would at the very least change the way I thought about things and the way I prioritize things. And not that I am my own world, but I figured if I was experiencing that, most everybody else was too. And that ultimately would just produce some big changes.
So you're living in Fort Worth at the time, and we'll kind of get to that in a minute. But was there a time that you can think of a physical, tangible manifestation of when you were like, holy shit, this thing is real and it's going to change everything?
I don't know if it was so much a moment, but there were conversations that I think spurred that. So I have a lot of nurses in my family. Mm-hmm. And, my go-to response when I hear something and it's like, oh, is that something I should worry about or not worry about? And I was talking to my brother and his wife, both of them nurses, and they said, no, this is like a real thing. This is a real thing. And then very early on, this happened probably by late March. My husband, one of his cousins in Plano, was in ICU with COVID and on a ventilator and whole 9 yards. And fortunately, he got out of it. But after a few weeks on the ventilator, they finally took him off. And then he spent months in a rehab facility. And I knew then that, yes, this was a serious thing. It was a matter of who it was going to impact. And at that time, I think people were thinking that, oh, well, this really only exists in other areas in the country. And that was in Plano, just across the Metroplex. So
what were some of the big changes in terms of how your priorities shifted or your outlook on life or your plans or goals or, how did it change you, Nancy?
I think mainly it was just to decide what was most important and then decide what we were waiting for. And by that, I mean, there were certainly things that we had on our list of stuff to do. We're at a stage where our second child was in college. We were looking forward to that moment where, oh my God, we're actually probably going to be empty nesters, going to have disposable income, going to be able to travel, going to be able to consider moving where we want to move. And, we had been busy kind of thinking about those things and making plans for years. And just the, remembering that things were different, that one, we had more freedoms in some odd ways than we did before, even though everything felt on lockdown. We just kind of wondered what we had been waiting for, and why not just trust that, we could make as large a shift as we wanted to, and that everything in the end would be okay. And I wouldn't have to leave my job and go find new work. And our girls would find their own place, whether that's, they wound up both in the Northeast because that's where they wanted to be. But, to just kind of let that moment come and go and let everybody find their own path.
Well, and to be clear, what we're talking about, because I don't think we said it out loud, is you moved to Maine, right?
Yeah, we did.
So,
yeah, we did.
March 30th, 2022. When did you move to Maine?
We moved on, I think we left Fort Worth the day after Labor Day. So that was like September 5th, I think. 5th or 6th, somewhere in there. It was a 3-day drive. It was a hellish 3-day drive with cars utterly packed full of stuff that was completely useless when we finally arrived. I had 2 cats. I can't even begin. I had 2 cats in the car I was driving, which was actually our younger daughter's car, because she had driven up with her older sister to help her move into Boston the week before. And then Rupert was in our car with a big dog, and it just, I think we landed in Portland, Maine on September 9th, and then became the mad scramble for, it's very easy to sell a house right now, but how do you buy a house? Like, how do you even find a house to buy? So
I'm glad we're having this conversation after, your first winter, because you moved there just in time for winter. I mean, it's already getting pretty cold in September. So now that you've weathered your first winter in Maine, how do you feel about your decision?
We're very happy with it. We really are. We enjoyed the winter. It was a lot of fun. We got our first big snow the day after Thanksgiving, and both of our daughters were here, and it was our first. We moved into this house. We closed on it the last day like October 29th. So, we moved in the first week of November. We very quickly set things up, had our first holiday, and we went out in the snow to just down the road to a Christmas tree farm where they actually, grow the trees, and showed up to get our first tree. And we opted to buy a freshly cut tree. And it was, it was those things that when you think about what you want, kind of those aesthetic trappings of a holiday season, we got all those for the first time ever. So we're excited. We did go out snowmobiling once. That was a lot of fun. And we've enjoyed the snow.
That's great. So, when we did that survey that I talked about earlier, some overwhelming amount, it was almost 70% of people said that they would consider moving to another city if they didn't have to come back to the office. Yeah. And we ran it again in April of 2021. So September of 2020 and April of 2021, and the number had gone up. And you actually did it. You're not the only one. And we've got more people, moving every day. So how significant was, kind of were the changes that we made to, kind of shifting to a permanent remote work model to your decision to go ahead and move to Maine?
Well, they were very significant because I wasn't willing to leave my job. So if this had not been an option, this would have been 10 years from now, we go ahead and do this. So it made all the difference in the world.
Yeah. I usually tell people before we start talking, and I forgot to, so I'll just say it on tape. This is not a propaganda, piece for the Star Conspiracy, right? And so we're not, I'm not going to use every opportunity to point out all the great things that we did, because I want to talk about a lot of the wrong things that we did. I'm curious if you would have, and the reason I kind of set it up is because I want you to answer this honestly. Would you have considered leaving the Star Conspiracy if we had not gone to a remote environment and you were forced to stay at the agency?
I don't think so, but there are no guarantees, I suppose. I mean, here's the reality is that I am where I want to be, and there's not another company that I want to work for. That said, if it came down to my family needed me to make a choice and it wasn't available for me, then yeah, they would come first. I mean, that is what is true, but I would not, I think, and I try to remember this every time I get frustrated with something. I think we have very high expectations, right, of who we are and what we create, where we are. And sometimes I will get very frustrated with something, and then I say, oh, okay, and what is it that I think that's going to be better or actually supply more freedom for me personally or the way I work anyplace else? And the answer is always, well, there isn't. So, get over this thing you're frustrated about, have a conversation about it, and move on. So I think we would have been, had we not been able to move about, and, I would have stayed where I was, but I probably would have had some ill feelings about it, especially if it had been promised before and then taken away. So,
yeah. Well, the reason I, double clicked on that and really want to talk about it is because supposedly we're in the middle of the Great Resignation, right? Which I don't agree with that idea, because I think there is a Great Resignation, but it's companies resigning themselves to this is the way it's supposed to be, instead of actually doing something about it. But, one of the big reasons that people provide for resigning from their jobs, besides being offered, like 3 times the amount of money or whatever, is being able to move and the flexibility to work remotely. And it's just really interesting to see that creative tension between, on the one end, I could say, look, the antidote to people, leaving is, even if you're, not going to allow them to move, is to create a job so great that, they wouldn't go somewhere else because they know they couldn't find, work that fulfilling. But the other side of it is you don't even have to worry about it if you just trust people and let them do what they want to do. Those two things don't have to be, a trade-off, right? It's like achieving what you want in life and being in a great place to work. What was your biggest challenge during the pandemic? Like, did you have a real low point or a time when things got really tough?
The big challenge for me was suddenly being in a house that was just filled with people 24/7. And so my husband was teaching at the time, so he got sent home. Our older daughter had a change in life and moved in with us, and she was working at a school, so she was sent home. And then our youngest was in college, and they shut down college, and she was sent home. And so while there were a lot of fun moments of us doing things that we hadn't really done together in a long time, like everybody cooking together in the kitchen and, all the jigsaw puzzles, like all of those family bonding times, when it came time for me to, okay, this is great, but I actually have a job. So like I spent just an ungodly amount of time stuck in our bedroom, because that was also my office. There was no other space to be. And that I think was that was the hardest thing for me, just the not being able to find kind of a quiet space. And, like, I love all you people. Please get out of my face. Like, just go away.
Oh, I know. I mean, well, I've got a story about that, but I'll tell it to you another time. So how about now? Since you've moved, do you have did you rethink the way that you use space, and did you dedicate space to, a place where you could?
Yeah, I have an actual office, which I'm actually not sitting there right now because that's one of the things we learned when we moved to Maine is internet is not necessarily readily available, and it took us almost 120 days to actually get internet in this house that we bought. But
they literally had to dig it there, right? They had to, like, dig it.
Yeah. Well, they had to drag it. Well, no, nothing is underground here. Everything was like in the air and above. But they had to go pole to pole and drag cables. But because our house is 3 floors, it doesn't spread as well. So I do have a nice dedicated office space, and that was very important. Interestingly enough, we were back in a moment where our house is filled with extra people due to the vagaries of life.
What was anything just super funny you remember, or a great memory that you have?
A specific memory,
even the strangest thing. What was the strangest thing that happened to you during the pandemic?
The strangest thing that happened. The only thing I can think of, probably just because it was more recent, but the last winter that we were in Fort Worth was when we had the giant ice freeze, and we, of course, lost electricity and water, and we had our 20-something daughter crammed in between us in the king-size bed with all the animals wrapped in every blanket we could find, trying to stay warm. It was like, I don't care if you're uncomfortable, sit there. You were going to keep me warm. Like, this is your job now.
It's like a baked potato. It's like putting a hot rock in your sleeping bag. How's your work changed during the pandemic?
How has my work changed?
Or just your work or your work experience? How's that changed?
I think it's changed for the better, honestly. It's, so I am fortunate to be a part of the creative team. Not that, any other group in the agency is not equally fortunate, but, we have a very tight-knit group of people. And one of the things that really became, that thing that I could look forward to every day is we have an end of day sync every day. And it's technically speaking, it's jump on for 15 minutes. Let's talk about, do we have any work that we need to share? Do we need anybody to review something? Do we need ideas? Do we need help? But it typically is maybe 30 seconds of, all right, I need help. Can I have you help me with this thing tomorrow? And then it's just time to be together. And that, I think, became that who we are together as a group became far more important when we didn't have the luxury of just having those, 5-minute conversations, walking up to get coffee, or, we were very accustomed to, all sitting at the same table and leaning over somebody's shoulder and saying, hey, can you look at this? And we had to find a way to recreate that virtually. And that was a challenge, but I think we did that well.
Was there ever a moment or an extended period of time as we've gone through the pandemic that you were worried about losing your job?
No, there really wasn't. I mean, when it first started, and at first my work was slow, maybe the first few months. And then the sales team just started killing deals left and right. And so, quite honestly, after a few months, I think I was too busy to worry about it. I figured if I had that much work, then we were okay.
Yeah. What do you attribute to the fact that, our business doubled during the pandemic? Just the volume of work actually more than doubled. Because we've really focused on becoming, more efficient and stuff like that. But why do you think that happened to us?
I think as tragic as a lot of elements of the pandemic have been, it was a boon for work tech. I mean, I think companies finally, for a lot of people, it was an aha moment of, oh, shit, I actually have to do something for my employees, and I have to figure out how to help them, get what they need out of work, not just produce a product. And so I think we were really in a good spot to benefit from companies that suddenly started investing in a way they had not before.
What do you think the Star Conspiracy did right so far through the pandemic? What have we done right?
I think prioritizing people over process and profits. I think this was the moment to just say, it's not that business doesn't matter, because business always matters. That's how we get paychecks. Mm-hmm. But putting that in balance with what do the human beings that do the work actually need in order to thrive in this moment? Let people thrive. Ultimately, the work will follow. So I think that was key.
Yeah, I remember at one point early on, like maybe April of 2020, saying that we will not lay off or fire a single person from the Star Conspiracy as long as this pandemic lasts. And I have to be honest, I had no idea how we were going to do it. But the reason
I didn't either, but
the reason I bring it up is because the way we did it, in my opinion, the solution that we had was basically to accelerate a lot of changes that we wanted to make in the work experience for a long time. And I was just having this conversation this morning with, an executive at a work tech company, and they were asking me a bunch of marketing questions, and I kept telling them they had an employee experience problem. And, basically, if you want to improve the customer experience and if you want to improve, the shareholder experience, you have to start with the employee experience, because they're the economic engine that drives everything. Yep. And so it seemed really counterintuitive at the time to say, we're not going to fire anyone. Now, let's focus all of our time, effort, and money on our own people. Like, well, shouldn't we be spending in marketing or something? And, counterintuitively, I think that that's what actually allowed us to do a really great job with clients and to perform really well over these last couple of years. What do you think we did wrong? What have we done wrong so far?
I don't know that there's anything that we necessarily did wrong, but I do think there were some choices that we made that probably had unintended consequences. And I think the only one that really jumps out to me when we shifted to the one team model, I think the unintended consequence was, experience. Is that what you said? Yeah.
No, I was going to say, don't say it, because if this is about the client draft. You were saying that there were some unintended consequences to one team, and just so everyone knows what one team is, it was and remains a concerted effort to eliminate management burden and management tax, administrative burden and administrative tax, and systems burden and systems tax. And a lot of that means flattening the organization, reducing hierarchy, and as much as possible, eliminating departments and having people flow to different kinds of work. Sometimes out of their comfort zone, so that we always have, people working on stuff. Everyone has a full plate, and you don't get the bullwhip effect of, creative being super busy, but content not having any work to do. And then PR, blows up and they don't have enough people, but content doesn't have any work to do, et cetera. So that was kind of like that one team transformation. It was significant. It was a huge shift in everything that we did. But you are saying that had some unintended negative consequences. And what are those?
Well, I think that the things that I think, one, that for a lot of people, it suddenly meant that while they were a part of a bigger team, they didn't have a little bit of a smaller team to gravitate to when they had immediate questions, when they didn't know what to do, or when they were just kind of feeling like shitty and lonely for that day. And I say that just knowing that that was one of the things that I think really helped those on the creative team kind of, like get over that hurdle into the next day and the next day and the next day, was that consistency of knowing, not that you can't count on everybody in the agency, but it's like you still need, it's kind of like there's your immediate family, and then there's like your extended family. Well, if you really need help in the moment, who are you going to go to? You're going to go to kind of that core group. Yeah. And so I think when we lose a little bit of that, I do like the flatter structure and things like that. I don't think we need heavy management. I think sometimes you wind up with maybe gaps in consistent leadership in smaller areas, and being able to know, really quickly who needs mentoring in a certain area, who's struggling in something, who's getting bored and needs to be pushed. So,
What lessons have you learned during the pandemic? Do you think it's possible that the pandemic is going to make the world a better place?
I think so. I mean, I would hope that, and I put a caveat on this statement because I know that we live in, just looking at the society in this country, it is the most divided experience I can possibly imagine. But my hope is that more and more people recognize that the way we get through this, just the way we get through everything, is to put some checks and balances against what I want versus what helps everybody, for the greater good. And that doesn't mean that we all have to be self-sacrificing, but what I want is no more or less important than what you want or what, somebody I don't know wants. Like, it all matters, and everything has to live in balance. And to recognize that, it's real easy to make assumptions about what somebody else wants and assume that, they want that for a less noble purpose than what I think what I want is. But all those are assumptions. And, we just need to dispense with those stories and kind of find that common ground. And I don't know how we do that in some cases at this point, but that's my hope. That is my hope.
Well, I think the best is yet to come, because I don't think that the period of great reflection has occurred yet. I think we've been in the shit for so long that, even if somebody had their 2 or 3 month break or whatever and thought that they had achieved some, epiphanies or something like that, I don't really think that we've absorbed what we've been through.
Well, I moved downstairs so I could be close to the router, and I made everybody leave the house, which was actually kind of blissful. It was like, oh my God, the house will be quiet for an entire hour and a half. I'm kind of digging this.
Wow. I tell everyone that we met at the farmer's market, so I must have the story wrong.
But no, we did meet at the farmer's market, but I actually knew your wife for probably a year, and I did not put 2 and 2 together that she was married to the man who started this agency that I was following. And one day it hit me and I was like, wait a minute, what's your last name again?
Do you know?
We're now spending our time figuring out what kind of watercraft we need to buy for the summer. Do we get a kayak? Do we get a canoe? Like, what do we get?
Canoe with a lot of primary stability, not secondary stability. You want it to not rock when it's just still.
Yes. The girls were adamant, no, we're going to go cut our own down. And I was like, really? Because your dad didn't want to come, and we haven't bought gloves yet, and you didn't even wear a coat.
And the Stukas, have announced that they're moving to Portland, Oregon, or Washington, just north of Portland. Just north of Portland, Oregon? Just south of Portland. I got him. Dana, cut the geography part. So I think Washington's north of Oregon, but I'm not sure.
Yes, Washington is north of Oregon. Younger daughter found an apartment near Portland with a roommate, and they moved in, and literally the third morning they woke up in the apartment completely covered in bed bug bites. It's just been this like nasty odyssey. We finally have managed to get them out of the leaks. They're living in our basement. Both of them have COVID right now, by the way. So, we're back to that. The pandemic is still with us.
Yeah, that was one of those moments for me where, like, going through the pandemic at that time, it was just like one thing after another. And it's like, are you kidding me? Now there's an ice storm. What's next? Like frogs? Is it going to, are the rivers going to fill with blood? I mean, what's going on? Innocently proposed that in an effort to, limit communication channels so that we could prevent interruptions, that we get rid of chat. And it was just like a throwaway comment about something I was looking at. And everybody freaked the fuck out. They were like, what? They're taking chat away? I was like, well, no, I'm sorry. I take it back. Like, people have brought this up to me like 15 times, and I acknowledge it was a terrible idea.
I don't even remember what you're talking about.
Oh, you don't remember when we reteamed And we basically said everyone needs to manage 3 clients.
Yeah, and, I was out that day. I was out
that was a good day to be out.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad I missed that. I will say I suck as an account manager, so, you know.
Me too. I was so in the boot to kick my own ass. I took 3 clients. I was terrible at it.
Teach you everything I know. Damn it.
No catching. Whoa. Where do you think the fishies go? I don't know. I want to get a video of some